Joining us now from Freedom Plaza is Bloomberg government congressional reporter Emily Wilkins. Emily, thanks so much for being here. What is it like where you are in Washington right now with this unprecedented security for the inaugural ceremony, and on top of that, a pandemic, keeping people home and keeping people apart?
Yeah, Tim, we already knew that this inauguration was going to be different than any other because of the COVID pandemic. The National Mall is usually full of people. Now it's currently full of flags representing people who would have been here but not for pandemic concerns. But then the events of 2 weeks ago, the insurrection at the Capitol, have basically turned downtown D.C. into a militarized zone. We have officers everywhere, 25,000 members of the National Guard. Downtown is completely blocked off. And we're not going to see a number of events that we normally see during a presidential inauguration, including the big parade that usually happens on the street behind me, Pennsylvania Avenue.
Where does Joe Biden come in all of this when it comes to his legislative priorities, when it comes to his executive priorities, Emily? Look, he's right now at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. He's there with Vice President-elect Harris, her husband, as well as members of his family, including the future First Lady, congressional leaders from both parties. What does his day look like for the remainder of the day?
Well, I think kind of you hit on one of the most interesting things right there. Biden invited and they accepted the offer. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, as well as House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, are with President-elect Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer right now at a church service. From there, they will go to the Capitol, where Kamala Harris will become the first woman of color to be sworn in as vice president, and Joe Biden will be formally sworn in as president of the United States. From there, they will be going to Arlington Cemetery to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier, and from there back to the White House, where Biden expects to sign at least 15 executive orders rolling back a number of Trump administration policies, including a ban on travel from certain Muslim countries. He'll stop the building of the wall at the southern border, and he will also rejoin the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Accord.
This is a very big deal, these executive orders. Millions of Americans woke up this morning to the news of these executive orders from the president-elect and his administration. Emily, if there are a couple of these executive orders that you think are the biggest deals, the most momentous, what are they?
Well, I think you can sort of break them down to two categories. One are sort of the policy-oriented ones, the bigger picture ones, joining the Paris Climate Accords, getting back into the climate game, joining the World Health Organization, showing how serious they are about beating back this pandemic. But then you also have ones that are really going to impact everyday Americans. They are going to continue the moratorium on evictions. They're going to continue preventing interest from accruing on student loans, stuff that we already saw in place initially, but will now continue as the pandemic continues to ravage the country.
We just saw President Trump make his way from the South Lawn of the White House aboard Marine One, go to Joint Base Andrews, where he made comments about his legacy in office. Right after that, we saw him and his family board Air Force One and head on their final trip aboard Air Force One as president and first lady. He is the first modern president to skip the incoming inauguration. He's going to Florida. He is not going to be in Washington, D.C. What is the significance of this?
I think you can take a couple different significances away from it. I mean, number one, it's interesting to see that while Trump is going to Florida, Vice President Mike Pence will be at Biden's inauguration. He will also be joined there by former Republican Speaker Paul Ryan, as well as former Republican President George W. Bush. So it's not like it's just going to be Democrats at Biden's inauguration. Republicans will be there. I think this really highlights how Trump is a very much unique president. Even though he is a Republican, he's not strictly with the Republican Party. I mean, we've heard discussion about Trump talking about potentially forming his own political party. And I've talked to a number of Trump supporters who have said that they're really supporters of the president first and members of any party second. And so what sort of force Trump's going to be able to exert over American politics in the coming years really remains to be seen. It remains to be seen how tightly that block of voters and other lawmakers will stick with him and will continue to look up to him as a leader in the party.
Where does Congress come in when it comes to the Biden team's agenda? They have a very, very ambitious agenda, including $1.9 trillion economic package, to focus on the recovery. Emily, you are Bloomberg government's congressional reporter. Any indication about how members of Congress will work or will not work with the president the president-elect, in order for him to get this ambitious agenda through?
So there are two ways this could go. The way the Biden administration would like it to go is for Republicans and Democrats to work together to pass some of these bigger packages. And Biden certainly already extended an olive branch towards Republicans in the Senate. Remember, he used to be one of them. He was a senator for a number of years, and he has relationships with a number of people in that body. So he's hoping that that can be the direction. However, if Republicans don't want to work with Biden, if they don't think they can agree to his policies, then the Biden administration still has a way to get things through. Remember, they do control the House and very narrowly control the Senate. All Democrats have to be on board, and then Vice President Harris can cast the tie-breaking vote. There are a couple mechanisms that they can do that. Get used to hearing the very wonky term budget reconciliation, because that can be used to pass a number of Biden's priorities, including the $1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus that he previewed last week.
Bloomberg government congressional reporter Emily Wilkins joining us live in Washington. Emily, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it this morning.